If you want, we can jump straight into our notes on the first episode, or just
Let's do that.
or
Yeah.
before the notes, any just in general stuff you guys wanted to say about the episode beforehand.
Um,
Um, I
it's
might.
I don't know.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's definitely like a mid episode. Like I don't know if you're gonna say that, but it's it's not the most interesting. They spend a heck of a lot of time um just like messing around with Grumpy in the front of the cave, which there's not a ton going on there. It's not bad by any means,
Yeah, no,
but
I definitely know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah.
But cause I think it's a really good introduction, because that is something that I also noted. It uses a lot of they spend a lot of time on Grumpy and the other dinosaurs. Like Spot. Like that's actually
Mhm.
the in the first scene of the show is
Yeah.
Spot, and then them watching it, and then Grumpy chasing him. Yeah, so they were only given. They were only able to pay for 45 minutes of stop motion footage for the entire first season. So they used a good amount of it just on the first episode, and then of course they reuse the footage a bunch, which is why you can see the same clips all over the place. But
Right.
but yeah, it definitely isn't the most exciting episode, but I think that's good. I think it does a really good job at just at being a introduction, because
Oh,
cause,
certainly.
cause you got to get used to it has to establish the characters and establish the not being on Earth, and imagine being a kid and seeing that stop motion for, like,
Absolutely.
that would be a great way to get someone hooked off the rip.
Worked on me.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. One interesting thing I heard was from that podcast that we were talking about before. Uh, Wesley talked about how they uh, Sid and Marty Croft, both after watching the first finished product of the episode, said it's not. They weren't expressing enough, so they needed to reshoot a bunch of scenes where they were like screaming. They were like,
Right.
you got to be more, more over the top. So,
It's hilarious.
so a lot of people are like, the acting is so like cheesy in the first episode when they're like, oh my god, it's Grumpy. But really, you can blame that on the Crofts specifically asking for more over the topness.
Well, then I'd like to also talk about the original concept for the first episode, right? Which I'm sorry I haven't had the chance to post in chat yet. I haven't gotten around to finding it. Um,
Oh, the
but
original script, yeah.
yeah, but there are some interesting little details in there which perhaps bear, talking about. There was Raw, the fourth Pakuni, that was cut from the show. Um,
That's crazy.
yeah,
I never knew
yeah,
about that.
yeah. Um, the original concept for like the vibe of the show is a specific painter. I can't remember um, who it was supposed to be inspired by, but it was all supposed to be like North American landscapes. The first scene, one of the first scenes, I believe, was hunting a rabbit, um, which
Interesting.
was, very different from the finished product. There was also originally, thank you. Originally, the first episode was going to be, or the way that they were going to drive off Grumpy, the fly swatter, was going to be, um, they were going to put like tar on the end of a stick and light it on fire
Oh, and have
and
like
stick it down his throat.
big fire stick, yeah.
Yeah, but of course, you can't do that
That's
because it's
all.
a fire hazard.
That's also a good idea though,
Mm-hmm.
if you were actually trying to stop a dinosaur.
Mm.
But if you, but as long as
Oh,
you,
it's
but
metal
as
as
long
hell.
as you get enough force behind it, just a pointy stick should do the trick.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
it does a really good job. It sets up the Pakuni, obviously, and it sets up like a really cool thing about episode 1 that I feel like I often forget is the fact that that's when the very first pylon is shown, and it literally lasts for all of 20 seconds. They walk up on it. They walk up on it. They're like, "What is that?" And then they touch it, and then they're like, "Wow, that's weird." And then they walk away.
Yeah.
And imagine being the audience. You're like, what is that? I want to know what that is." And then
Right.
throughout the course of the show, they slowly, like, when's the next time you see a pylon? I don't think there's one in episode 2, because episode 2 is Sleestak God, and episode 3 is Dopey, so I don't think so either. But I think there's one in Downstream.
Yeah. I think tactically that was a really good idea.
It just laid the seed, yeah.
Right. You know, if you're like an adult watching the show, right, you're like, I want to, like, if you're a kid, obviously, you're like, oh, dinosaurs.
Exactly.
I want to see this again. I want to come back. But like, if you're an adult, you're like, oh, this is
nuance.
There's something, you know, actually going on here. I'll follow up next week, and maybe there'll actually be some cool, you know, story, like world building going on here, which of course there was.
Yeah. And Gerrold did a good job at dropping that in the very first episode. And another thing that was dropped in the first episode that doesn't get explained until like the end of the season, I'm pretty sure, is when, or do they, I don't know, maybe they talk about it in Stranger, but when Rick is like, it was like we fell through a hole in space, you know?
Yeah.
That iconic scene near the very beginning.
Yeah. I wrote that down because it was, it never seemed to end. It was like we fell through a hole in space. You know, it's another one of those Rick Marshallisms. It's, you know, knowing way more than you should, but
right.
But it's cool, you know, that immediately established that there is some interesting like sci-fi elements going on in this kids TV show.
Yeah, for sure. And there was also, well, no, okay, before I'll talk about them in order. So before that, it's the fact that it's Chaka bites Will. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And also the fact that Will says, "I don't think it's broken. It might just be a fracture."
Yeah.
He probably meant to say sprain there, because a break and a fracture are the same thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was a writer's choice, trying to show the fact that Will is a child and doesn't know the difference.
Right.
Doesn't know the difference between a break and a fracture, or the fact that there is not a difference. What am I meant to say?
I've watched that series. Many of my friends I've introduced to this series, and every time I watch that scene with Chaka, you know, where he bites Will, and then immediately after, Will's like, I think I should carry him home.
I think he trusts me. Yeah. Yeah. I also wrote that down. Yeah, I was like, bruh, like, yeah. Seems like he trusts you.
Yeah.
And also a funny little thing I noticed that I had never noticed before was in that scene when Rick first walks up and he's like, "Who is this?" And they're like, "It's Chaka." Rick bends down to like look at his leg, and Spencer Milligan like trips, like he almost falls. It looks like, and Wesley like catches him, and he's like, and you know they just keep acting. It was good. It was good recovery.
I entirely missed that.
It's not super obvious. It's not like he totally fell sideways, because then they would have reshot the scene. It's just a little stumble, but you can definitely see it. And now that I've pointed it out to you, you'll never not see it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I'll have to look for that. There's a bunch of stuff like that. Like there's one episode, I think one of our pylons is missing, where Holly like puts her hand up against a tree and it like falls over, and she kind of just like moves out of the way like this.
Yeah.
Like, pretends like she meant to do that, you know. And there's one Skylons when they're hunting chickens. You can hear the cameraman laughing in the background.
Yeah. That scene, that hunting chicken scene also just got me. That scene was also so funny because the whole point of the scene is the chickens are supposed to run away, and they're like 2 feet in front of it. Like he could easily reach down and grab like 4 of them. You know, It's really good.
Or like 2 feet away. Ah, dang it, Ollie! Come on, man.
But back to Chaka though.
Yeah.
This episode, I did when watching it with a fine-tooth comb, going through it with a fine-tooth comb, I did notice some continuity mistakes that I'd never noticed before. And but you can use your imagination to write them off. But an interesting thing that I think we often overlook is it was assumed by me anyway that the episode starts with them like immediately after the theme song ends, like
Right.
they run into the cave, they wait there for a little bit, Grumpy gets tired and goes away, and then they walk out.
They start exploring.
That's what I always assumed. But
Yeah.
in the episode, Rick says,
I don't know how we got here or why, but I think we're in another world.
like, how, Daddy? And he's like,
Last night I saw 3 moons in the sky.
so that would lead you to believe it would go theme song, they run in the cave, they stay in the cave all night, Rick sees 3 moons in the sky, and this is the next morning. So the first episode is actually picking up on their second day, technically, but like still their first real morning, because But that's an interesting. That's just one thing. But the big thing was the fact that so they've only been there for one day. That's obvious because they don't know anything, and they name Grumpy and Spot and all that for the first time. So they just got there. How do they have the basket?
Yep. I have that written down.
Right.
I have never thought about that before, and it's not, because one, Rick's a smart guy. Maybe the second the theme song ends, Rick is like, all right, we're living here, so let's build a basket, and that's still a little sus, because, like, come on, out of all things, like, you need a fire, you need, like, firewood, like, food, but a basket, and the thing that, and so that I might be able to write off, like, sure, he wants a basket, but it's the elaborate pulley system attached to the basket, and while we're there, what is that stick that is sticking out of the top of the cave? You know what I'm talking about? Because that's the thing that they use the basket. That's the thing that the pulley system on the basket is attached to. So I've thought about that when I watch the theme song and stuff. I'm like, why is that stick there? Is that stick natural? And obviously they didn't put it there because in the theme song they're running in for the first time. So when you take these continuity questions all together, one might be able to say, perhaps the cave was lived in before. The stick was put there by someone else who previously lived there, and the basket and the pulley system was left there, abandoned, either when they died or when they escaped.
Yeah.
This is all, of course, my personal fringe theories, but I just think it's interesting. I like, how do they have the basket?
Yeah. And like the inside of the cave is like pretty perfect for living. Like,
well, that's the other thing I thought about.
Cables and stuff.
I thought about thinking. I was like, what does the inside of the cave look like? Like, does it look way too advanced for it being their first night? Like, maybe more stuff was left there, but it looks pretty barren. Like in the first episode, the only things that are there is really like their sleeping bags and the fire pit. But a fire pit, I'll give you. That's the thing that you build on the first night. It's not hard. You get a couple of rocks, you get some wood, you make a fire, and then that's there. But the elaborate pulley system, I feel like that's at least a couple day long project. Even if you and Will were like going hard at it. I mean, just collecting the materials is gonna take half a day, right?
Yeah, I mean,
so that's just an interesting,
you're absolutely right.
Continuity thing I never thought about before. Always.
I hadn't thought of that either.
Went over my head, yeah. And it always went over my head the fact that he said, last night I saw 3 moons in the sky. So it's their second day.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, Rick says, let's get the fly swatter. So they've obviously dealt with Grumpy before.
Right.
So they,
right.
So they had to get this giant log basically up into the cave. Was that already there? Did they bring it up there?
And it's a sharpened log.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, did they spend all night, like, sharpening it? Because that was another thing I was thinking for my theory, because that's obviously a common threat, Grumpy. So I was thinking part of the theory could be the giant sharpened stick was left there also. with the basket, and then that would explain, imagine immediately after the theme song ends, they see the giant stick laying on the ground, and then they put 2 and 2 together, and they're able to, do it. Or they sharpen it themselves on the first day, because that would be a realistic thing. I could imagine they hide in the cave, wait for Grumpy to get bored, and then once he does, Rick is like, we gotta do something about that, and then he decides to take a fallen tree and sharpen it. That could happen.
Right.
But it also could have.
Right.
But it also could have been left in the cave. And the cave. It's such a secure location, and the steps and the steps up to it, and the tables, the table-like structures inside of it. I've always just chalked up to being natural and it being a really nice formation for someone to live in. But who knows? Maybe someone like carved that out, like made it better. Made it easier to walk up. Type thing. I'd subscribe to that theory.
I'm totally here for it. I like it. I'd also like to, before we get too far away from Chaka, I want to talk about a couple things I noticed them mention about him. And these were all Rick Marshallisms. They're like things that they shouldn't have logically known, but are still, usually get it right. So I think it's worth talking about.
Yeah.
They establish that, so they say Chaka is, they say, is he a caveman, a monkey, or what? And they suggest he's an ape, but evolved like everything else here.
That sentence has always got me. I've always been like, what?
Yeah.
So that implies Grumpy is not a T-Rex. It makes sense that Spot is not a Coelophysis. If you're familiar with like your dinosaurs, Coelophysis is like this tall. And that's pushing it actually.
And isn't it also not omnivorous? It's a
carnivore. I
thought I remember reading something about Hurricane and them being like, yeah, that's incorrect.
I am, and this is just a fan theory, but I really like the idea that these, because I love speculative evolution. I really like the idea of all of these dinosaurs being descended from well-known dinosaurs, but having like evolved to fit new niches in Land of the Lost.
We don't know how long the land has existed. So if it's been there for like millions of years, then they would definitely have evolved in their own environment.
Yeah, we know it's at least thousands.
Yeah, I was gonna
from
say
Slatch.
we do know at least thousands. But who knows?
Right.
Perhaps in this environment, evolution is accelerated. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe the Pakuni, when they originally got sucked into the Land of the Lost, were just like apes, but then they fast evolved. Who knows? But I also like the theory that the Pakuni are like. I've always subscribed to the idea that they are like Australopithecus or something like that. Or like just some sort of ancient humans that got sucked into the Land of the Lost because a doorway opened, but it was like tens of thousands of years ago.
I was going to say the same. I really like, and in the movie actually, now of course this isn't canon, but in the movie they suggest that Chaka is an Australopithecus.
Oh, really? They did. See, that's cool.
Yeah. Yep. So I was going to say I would be willing to wager that Chaka is at least in Australopithecina, possibly a Paranthropus because they're herbivorous. That's just speculation, but it would be cool if it was a separate lineage of humans.
And I'm still up for debate on whether or not the Pakuni eat meat or not. That's one of my.
He eats chicken.
That's one of my biggest questions. What do you say?
He eats chicken.
He does.
He ate chicken.
I know he does in that one scene. But like in every other scene, he's like Pakuni are vegetarian. Yeah. Like they say it. But then there's that other scene where Ta is like, let's put a iguana in the soup.
That too.
So I'm
they break the rules all the time.
So I'm like, I don't know. Yeah, I think maybe they were wrote to be vegetarian, and maybe like the Marshals spoiled them, made them not vegetarian, because the time that Chaka eats chicken is with them.
Yeah.
So maybe it's because of them. Maybe
Maybe he didn't know what it was.
maybe they only ever ate vegetables and fruit beforehand because they were afraid of, they just couldn't, because we know that they're afraid of pigs.
Yeah.
So like, what else really could they possibly kill and catch? I suppose chicken.
Yeah.
But like chicken
iguana,
but
of
chicken
course.
are loose. Yeah, they could eat iguana. You're right. But another funny moment, kind of like the Rick falling over thing, was that I saw was in the scene where after they get Chaka in the cave, after the whole basket thing, she's heating up the water to clean the wound on the fracture that isn't a compound fracture. That's a whole nother thing. Why do they need boiling water to clean the wound of a compound fracture to set the leg? But anyway, what I was gonna say was the fact that when Holly is like, or when Will is like, don't burn the water, and she's like, you can't burn water, and he's like, the way you cook it, we can. There, obviously it's a fake fire underneath it, but if you look at the fire, it goes like poof, like it gets like bigger, and Holly, Kathleen, she like gets spooked in the middle of her lines. She like jumps back, and she also, just like Rick when he falled over, she played it off great. She continued speaking her lines, but you could see that she visibly jumps back when the fire pops up, because it probably wasn't supposed to do that. It looked like someone like turned the burner up, you know what I mean, because it looked like the fire just went from being that to being like poof, and
That's so funny. I haven't noticed that.
yeah, those little details that are great.
I'll have to look for those tonight. Yeah. I also want to mention, speaking of speculative evolution and a little bit of more traction, other than, David Gerrold saying, putting in the script that might be the case, right? Is the fruits in Land of the Lost are much bigger than they are on Earth,
That's
right?
true. Very big apple.
Right. Which, if you're familiar with Pleistocene history, and this probably happened many of other times, but I specifically know, in the case of ground sloths, right, in South America, avocados evolved to be larger and have larger pits because they were being eaten by larger herbivores.
Yeah.
So they needed to pass through those digestive systems. Point being, if you're being eaten by dinosaurs, you're going to need bigger fruits.
Very, very true, yeah.
So they never explain the bigger fruits. They say the soil, but,
yeah.
That
does seem to lend itself to the theory of the fact that things evolve faster in the Land of the Lost, or at least that it's been around for a while, long enough for things to have evolved in it.
Yep.
You have
to work with each other.
You have to either subscribe to one of those, either that evolution happens faster or that it's been around for a while.
Right.
Which is very, very interesting point. Yeah, because I've thought about that big fruit also. Yeah, the big vegetables, because that's established immediately, because in this episode at the very end, Chaka gives them the surprise of all of the big fruit at the end.
They establish it the first episode,
which is a lot of giant fruit for tiny little Chaka to carry all the way up there.
It is.
Must have made like 7 trips. It's not like
use the basket.
I was gonna say it's not, but the basket got eaten by Grumpy.
All right.
The basket gets destroyed by Grumpy, and it's not like they have the cart, because that doesn't happen till episode 3. So he was walking all night carrying that fruit. What a guy. We love Chaka.
Here's one more thing. Speaking of Chaka, while we're still on this, the evolution stuff. One of the things Rick says when he first meets Chaka is he looks like a chimp, which, of course, chimps being our closest relatives, not a far, stretch to assume that he is an Australopithecus descendant.
True.
Or, of course,
or I've always liked the theory that perhaps instead of maybe exactly Australopithecus, he's a descendant of humans that we haven't discovered yet. One more advanced. One perhaps on par with, say, Neanderthal.
Right.
Right.
between
or
Homo erectus.
Denisovan.
Right. Something between like the more modern, intelligent humans and like
Yeah, because
Australopithecus.
they formulated their own language, which is a big thing
Yeah,
for intelligence,
that's
obviously.
huge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it's got to be.
And they have culture and religion.
Yeah. Yep. It's got to be. It couldn't be an Australopithecus. It has to be an Australopithecus descendant.
Another
Or Australopithecine
yeah.
descendant. A separate lineage that we just haven't discovered yet. Or
Yeah.
maybe they evolved intelligence in the Land of the Lost. They were already set on that course on Earth as Australopithecines, but
then developed it once they went through the portal. Yeah, perhaps enhanced by the maybe faster evolution that happens. Yeah, possibilities are endless, indeed.
Yep.
One of the really good things from this episode is family show. You gotta have your family Rick moments, and I am going to make a compilation of every time Rick says the daily episode, the weekly episode lesson, and and this week
people don't
own other people.
And
which
so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, like obviously, like today that's nothing.
Yeah,
but it's pretty basic stuff. But
yeah.
back then, that's really nice.
That's
cool.
Awesome. Yeah, exactly. It's for a kid show, and also not only is it a great moral to just give to children, people don't own other people. It's also establishing Chaka as a person.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that shows children to not just because you're different doesn't mean you're not like me. And it's like,
Isn't that incredible?
It's so adorable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is one of my favorite Rick moments, and it happens straight out the gate.
Yeah, one of my next things I was going to say was that right off the bat, that's one of the main things of the show, is that all the people are people. And that's one of my biggest grievances with season 2 is that the Sleestaks start to become like villains. Like they're not people you can empathize with anymore.
And in season 2, it starts to happen, but it's not as bad because you still have
season 3
because you still have moments like it. Because if I'm not mistaken, Fair Trade is in season 2, right? And Fair Trade is a very humanizing episode for the Sleestak. I feel like they're like, look, we want something, you want something here, and they get it done. And they totally could have gone back on their word and had double the meal. They could have kept the pig and Rick, but instead they gave Rick back just like they said. And what's the episode where they give him back his knife? Was that also Fair Trade? I think it was.
That was Blackout.
Oh yeah, it was Black. Yeah, they gave him back his knife. That was pretty. Yeah. That was pretty OG of the Sleestaks.
Sorry, not Blackout. Longest Day.
Yeah, you're right. Because he ended up fixing the pylon for him. Yeah.
Right.
Not only this episode actually you get a double feature. You get two Rick life lessons because at the very end he says
it takes a lot of trust to make a friend, Holly.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's adorable.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that. David Gerrold, I believe, has said that the Sleestak were meant to be a metaphor for the Vietnamese. Like an oppressed people, who are, they're interpreted as violent, but they're really just trying to protect all that they know is theirs.
Which is what Enoch tries to explain.
Right. They're not evil. I think they're actually a pretty good allegory for like any native population being villainized, by colonists.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Until you get to season 3.
Oh my God.
Then they're bad.
Yeah. Which. Yeah. That was a bummer.
This episode also. What was I gonna say? Oh yeah, has the first. It's also family show, kids show. Gotta have the sibling bickering. It starts that trope, and that's also another compilation I'm gonna make. It's gonna be probably like 20 minutes long of every time Will and Holly are yelling at each other, And but I feel like that's also important to establish in a kids show, especially in the first episode. I mean, to establish that because it shows the family unit. Them two bickering, Rick being like, "Shut up, you're gonna have to cook tonight." That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Kids can relate to that when they have siblings and when they get in trouble.
But that just shows they made Holly cook the first night they were there. Remember that?
You're right.
True.
Little
Kind of stuff.
little stereotypical there, but
Perhaps.
at least people don't own other people. Well, that's fair.
Right.
Mhm.
And they said the thing about Grumpy turning into a bird, like that.
They did.
That's the most advanced thing I've ever heard. Isn't that the coolest shit ever? Yeah, that was.
It's incredible.
And I looked it up to make sure that they weren't like at the actual first ones to say they weren't. Like the theory had been going around since the 60s,
Right.
but we didn't get any solid like evidence and like fossil evidence or like and therefore traction in the overall scientific community until much later, like in the 90s is when they what's the name is it Archaeopteryx?
Archaeopteryx.
Or something
yes.
like that. Is that the first flying dinosaur they discovered? Or the first dinosaur with feathers that they discovered? Yeah. And since then we found a lot of more trace fossils that show dinosaurs with feathers. But in the 60s, it was like a fringe theory. In the 70s, it was like, yeah, a couple people believed it. So the fact that they were like, yeah, in 1,000 years you'll be a bird, that's like, I love that.
I remember, actually, I believe that one of the, I got you. One of the, I'm gonna have to go in just a second, guys.
Oh yeah.
But one of the one of the really big things in Darwin's book on the, what's it called? On the something of animals.
On the origin of species.
On
The origin of species.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Classic.
In one of the things that one of the issues was he was saying, we don't have any like links between this animal and this animal, and Archaeopteryx was one of the first fossils that was like,
Yeah.
it proved that theory. I'm gonna have to go now, but
Yeah, you're all good.
while I am gone, promise me that you guys will talk about the announcement.
I was gonna say,
happened.
don't worry. I was about to close it off for that. We would be fools if we did not talk about that. Yes, I got you.
And next week, I will talk with you guys more. But please, at least mention it.
Yeah.
In case anybody hears this, everybody needs to know.
Yes.
So, okay, you guys have a nice night.
See ya. Anything else to add about the first episode? Do you have any other
You mean,
things written down we didn't hit?
I guess I just have a few like map related stuff.
Oh yeah, the mapping. Yes, indeed.
Well, first of all, the intro song for the first episode is different from all the other ones.
Really?
It's like the other episodes, they have like layered Wesley's vocals like layered, but the first one it's just a different take or something. It's
Dude,
weird.
You know what? That is so crazy that you're saying
It's
this.
just the first one, and you can hear it. It's so strange.
The reason why I'm freaking out is because I watched the episode, and while the theme song was playing, I was like, have I not heard the theme song in a while? I was like, I know what this sounds like. I was like, why does it sound weird? And I just like shrugged it off, But like, you're totally right. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna like put them next to each other now that you say that. But I'm pretty sure I know that you're right already because I literally had the same thought. I was like, why does the theme song sound different in the first episode? And I think that is it. It's because it sounds like not layered. Yeah.
Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition. Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition.
Yeah, it's the first one. It's the only one that's different out of the first two seasons.
That's
It's so strange, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I noted it was the first time I saw Spot, and that's the first thing we even see in the whole show. The time of day, if we're being generous and saying that they built the basket, maybe it's the afternoon-ish of the second day.
A good amount of stuff does happen though, because they. Oh yeah, and that was another thing. Because what I was gonna say is, they're outside, they're looking at Spot, then they go the whole Grumpy meet with the Pakuni thing happens, the whole saving Chaka thing happens,
Mhm.
the whole his leg thing happens, and then they carry him back to the cave. And that's what I was gonna say. The fact that when they carry him back to the cave, like we were laughing about the fact that Will makes a point to be the one to carry him because he trusts him more.
Yeah.
But did you notice the fact that when they get back to the cave, Rick is the one that has Chaka slung over his shoulder? So,
But somehow they can't. He can bring him all the way back to the cave, but he can't bring him up the little steps.
I always
there.
thought that too. I'm like, why can't they just carry him up the steps? I was like, just carry him
Right.
up the steps. Yeah, no, literally, yeah, exactly. But so that means at some point, I guess Will got tired and had to like give Chaka to Rick, and then
I guess.
Rick slung him over his thing. Yeah, but that's just another funny thing that I never noticed. That's kind of a continuity thing, because
Mhm.
and it wouldn't be that bad if it showed Will carrying him and then it was Rick. But the fact that Will goes out of his way to be like, I gotta be the one to carry him, and then in the immediate next transition scene, Rick is the one carrying him. So it's like, bruh, kind of funny. But you can always find little stuff like that.
Yeah, and I guess let's see. Yeah, and then the Will line. I bet he evolved like everything else in this world. Like, how do they know any of that? That's a Rick Marshall line.
Yeah, they've been there for less than 48 hours, and he's making presumptions about everything, quote unquote, everything else in here. Like you don't even know where here is yet, Will. Yeah, that line always got me.
And then I have one day in, they already constructed a basket and pulley system. Maybe it was already there, or that weird like log or beam, whatever is above the cave entrance. I guess, yeah, I didn't notice that it was in the title sequence, but if it's there, then that must have already been there.
That's what I'm saying. Well, I've always thought it was like a natural structure, but like think about what it is and like what natural structure. Like, do trees grow out of the sides of mountains ever? Does that happen in nature? I don't know, but maybe it can in the land of the law. Maybe the gravity pylon was messed up and a tree grew sideways. I don't know. You never know in the land of the law. But
Yeah, I have no way to explain that.
yeah, but so that makes me think it's not natural. That leads me to believe it was like a hole was in the thing, and whoever lived there previously decided to jam a big, tree trunk in there for the purpose of using it as a pulley system, and other things.
And then during the night, they show the night transition slide twice before they actually go to sleep. So either they're staying up like super late or the night is just super long.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another thing. The day night is a little wonky in the episode.
Yeah.
It switches back from day to night at kind of interesting times. Yeah.
But yeah, that is kind of the end of my notes here. I mean, we got the map stuff.
Yeah. What stuff did you see in that aspect?
So basically, the map that we already have seems to be fairly correct. The pylon is fairly close to what Rick calls the meadow, which was that area just kind of in the middle of like a clearing. And that is between the lake and the pylon, and then we don't ever see them crossing the river. So it has to be where it is in the map. So the map is correct.
Just to confirm, you mean by lake, you mean swamp, yeah?
The swamp, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. That's what I thought you meant, I mean, hey, if you're going by the canon of the of one of the books, what's the book from the 70s called? The Color a Dinosaur or whatever. One of the books, there's a lake in the book that all the dinosaurs are like drinking out of, and you're like, what? Where's that in the show?
It does kind of look like a lake, but we know that there is no lake in the
actual land. Yeah. There's the water hole though.
Yeah, it's the swamp though, I believe, because the mountains are like directly in the background.
Yeah.
So we could add that landmark onto the map if we wanted to. But yeah, that looks like pretty much all I got. Do you have any more notes?
Yeah, no, I think we hit most of my things. Yeah, and yeah, I just wanted to reiterate again how I think it's a really good introduction episode, and really the first and the second episode should be taken as a couple. because David Gerrold wrote both of them, and he
Mhm.
not only did he write both of them, he didn't write them separate. They were wrote together. You know what I mean? He wrote the one script, and it was split into 2 episodes. So both the first 2 episodes serve as the introduction to the series because they introduce all of your main protagonists and antagonists for the entire rest of the show. You got the marshals, obviously, but then you got the dinosaurs, and then the
Mhm.
Pakuni, and then the Sleestak. And after you get all those introduced, that's all of your main cast right there, except for Enoch, who comes up in The Stranger. But I think David Gerrold did a really good job at setting the episode up, and setting the series up, setting the stage for everything.
Mhm.
Planting the seeds. With the hole in space talk that wouldn't really get addressed until Circle, and the pylon talk that wouldn't get addressed until later down the line either, when they just show the pylon and then go away. Yeah,
Yeah.
all
I'm
very good
noting
stuff.
4 minutes in they show the pylon, so it's very early, and they just show it for like 30 seconds, and then
And then it's
it's
gone, yeah.
it.
And they don't show you what the inside is. And the last thing that Will says is like, "I wonder what it was used for." And then they go away. So
Yeah.
him saying that naturally makes the audience be like, "I wonder what it was used for." And yeah,
Yeah,
good stuff.
good introduction there.
Very much, yeah. So like you said, it's a. I'm pretty sure in my tier list I had it in the like okay tier, like the middle tier, because
Yeah.
it's not the most exciting, but like you said, yeah, really good starting episode.
Yeah, it's hard to make exposition episodes like that good because there's nothing to build off of.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's what you want. You don't want your first episode. If you think about the first episode of most shows,
Yeah.
you don't want the first episode to be really, really action packed. It's supposed to be set up, and you can't. The first episode can't have super mind blowing stuff because then it wouldn't
Yeah.
be super mind blowing. Because the reason why Circle is so good is because it's been building up for a season. You've been spoon fed these questions across the episodes, and
Exactly.
Circle is the one that answers it, so it's satisfying. So yeah, you got to have the episodes that are near the beginning that just do the setup. Yeah.
But yeah.
And they still make it exciting because dinosaurs. Stop motion.
Yes, there are a lot of dinosaurs.
Stop motion dinosaurs. Everybody loves it.
Yeah, I noticed they used a lot of footage,
Yeah, I purposely
especially in the cave area. Yeah.
I purposely wrote that down too, as to the fact that they start the series off with a lot of stop motion to like show the audience what they can expect, and like I said, especially in 1974. That's high quality stuff. That's like mind blowing stuff.
Yeah.
Seeing that. I mean, it still is high quality stop motion. Stop motion is hard to do. So
Yeah,
like
that's not done anymore, so that actually
when
is.
I watch those grumpy scenes, they're still impressive. Because I think about the guy like moving each individual leg when he's doing his run cycle. Like yeah. Or
Yeah.
you remember that one scene? I don't know what episode it's from. Actually, I think it's Downstream. Where Grumpy takes a sip out of the river.
I'm not sure.
He literally he bends over to the river and drinks out of it, and they like completely animate the water like falling out of his mouth, and it's so good. It's such good animation.
I didn't know that.
One of my favorite Grumpy moments actually, and it's only on screen for like a few seconds. Yeah, so I don't blame you for forgetting it. It's up there with the moment where he's crossing the bridge to go to the Lost City, and he slips.
Yep,
And it looks like he's gonna fall into the crevasse, and you're like, holy shit. Like, I swear, every time I watch that scene, I'm like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, is he gonna fall? Like, I know he's not gonna fall, but I'm still like, oh my god, because the animation is so, convincing with him like struggling to get back up to the ledge. It's a great moment. And a fun fact about that moment, which you probably already know because I've probably said it before, but maybe not. The fact that moment was actually a surprise to
I think you mentioned that, yeah.
It was a surprise to the creators because they thought that they had used up all of their filming for the dinosaurs, so they thought they could only use recycled clips. And, they already had a clip of Grumpy walking across the bridge, so it was all good. But when it was David Gerrold, when this is where I heard the story from in one of his interviews. When David Gerrold saw that scene of Grumpy almost falling into the thing, it was a pleasant surprise to him, because I guess they filmed it without him knowing and slid it in there. Nice little bonus.
That's cool. I didn't know that though.
Oh, you didn't know that? Okay, yeah, that's good.
Well, I mean, I think you might have said it, but I didn't know that previously.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so do we want to talk about the announcement then?
Yeah. Yeah, bro, that insane. So the Crofts made a post to their Facebook page, and the way that I came across that, when I saw this, it was only 2 hours old, and I saw it because someone else reposted the post into the Land of the Lost group chat. So it's a post that says something to the effect of, this is what is on our minds at the Crofts today, and then it's a picture of the Land of the Lost logo. And I'm sure I'll have it up right now when I edit this. And that on its own is a little cryptic, and if anything, just a little cute. Maybe they're just saying, we're thinking about Land of the Lost today. And that is what was reposted in the group chat. But what the guy didn't repost in the group chat was the comment section, which is what I looked at. And in the comment section, there was people asking questions, but the only replies from the Crofts were 2 replies. One of them said, when they said, in what way is it on your mind? And the reply was, a historic day for Land of the Lost and the Crofts coming soon. More details coming soon. And the second reply was to a question that said, new movie, please, this time with more heart. And they said, yes, you are correct. That was literally the reply straight out of the horse's mouth. And when I saw this, the comment was 20 minutes old. So, of course, I immediately screenshotted the comments and posted them into the group chat. And that post is getting the biggest response I've ever gotten from one of my posts. Like 80 people have liked that post, and it has like a bunch of comments. Everyone's freaking out, obviously, because it's seemingly confirmation from the Crofts that there's a new Land of the Lost movie in the works.
Yeah, and when you saw when I saw that, I was thinking, reminding back to all the times that you were talking about, like, this is the 40th anniversary of this episode, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I mean, the timing seems like, okay, 50 years, if they had all this time to do this, maybe they're releasing it in a year, because we're almost at the end of 2022.
Yeah, and you got to think, filming and production does take time, so maybe it is the thing being lined up for the 50th anniversary. You never know, but yeah, it's very exciting, and
Yeah.
I'm excited, but I'm also trying to not be I don't know, too hopeful, only because they've done this before. They not directly made a Facebook post where they literally confirmed it in the comments, which is why I'm still excited. But what they have done before is they have had interviews with, like, news articles online and stuff where they said, yeah, we're open to the idea of working on a movie, or they've said, like, yeah, we want to make a new series, like, they've said this multiple times, post 2009, I'm referring to also because, because we all know that a movie was made.
Yeah.
But what we're referring to is a good movie that will actually be faithful to the story and pick up where it left off. But I think that this one is for real, and I think that we have merit to be excited about it, because if you connect the dots to the podcast that we were talking about last time, the podcast that we were talking about last time is in that David Gerrold says he's working on the novel for Land of the Lost that will answer unanswered questions, and he also said that he's in discussion with the Crofts to make that novel into a movie. That's what he said, and that interview is from a year ago. So if they are in discussions with David Gerrold, that is more hope, because a Land of the Lost movie that they purposefully make truthful to the story it will be great. But the only way for it to be the true Land of the Lost sequel movie is if it is written by David Gerrold, and I will accept nothing else. So the fact that he said that makes me very happy, especially because if you know your history, you know that David Gerrold and the Crofts didn't have the nicest exit. It wasn't necessarily like super mean. It was basically just when the second season rolled around, people in the production staff were like, yeah, we don't want to bring David back. He's hard to work with. And in his own words, he said, yeah, I'm hard to work with. I don't let you rewrite scripts behind my back. So, he's just a good writer. And so, yeah. But they still kept most of his writing staff that he brought along for the first season in the second season, which is why, story-wise, the second season still holds up. It's still so much good stuff in season 2. But season 3, completely new writing staff. It wasn't the same at all. But, yeah, I really hope that this time when they say they're making a new movie, they're for real. And I really hope that David Gerrold is a part of it. I tried my hardest to get more responses, to get more info in the form of, in the comments, I said, I'm currently praying that David Gerrold is the lead writer for this. And, it's Facebook, so whenever you say someone's name, it, tags them. So basically, I tagged David Gerrold in the comments of it, and I know he's active on Facebook because he posts every 5 minutes. I love David Gerrold on Facebook. I follow him thoroughly. And so I was hoping he was going to respond to it to be like, yes, I am the writer, or to be anything. Even if he replied with a hush face emoji, I would be excited because that would be ooh, you can't talk about it. And then I also messaged Wesley on Reddit asking him if he could give me any info if he knows if David's involved or if he and Kathy are involved. David said in that interview that I keep referencing from a year ago that Spencer said he no longer wants to act. So we know that Spencer wouldn't be a part of it. Maybe he could make a cameo or something or do a voiceover. But he said he doesn't really want to do any acting anymore. But I messaged Wesley, hoping he replies, asking him if they are involved. And I also said, but if you can't give me any information, I completely understand, because if it's if they are working on it, I wouldn't be surprised if you're not allowed to talk about it because, it's a movie in progress.
Yeah, I want to get my hopes up for this, I don't know if it's going to be a movie or just a novel. Either one, it would be amazing. Any sort of content.
It's true, yeah. A novel from David Gerrold would be magical, especially because he literally said that he would answer the questions. He said, I've always known how it works, the Land of the Lost.
Yeah, I love that. I've always known.
And then he proceeds to say, I'm not going to tell you right now. I'm like, God damn it, David, please. I want to know. I've wanted to know for 48 years. I mean, I've only wanted to know for 20 years. I'm a baby, but...
Yeah. I do hope that we get a movie release, though. Because right now, it's just, you search Land of Lost on YouTube, you get this clip from the stupid 2009 movie that has 78 million views. Nobody even knows about the old show. You have to scroll so far, and the only video that actually has a decent amount of views is just the theme song.
Yeah.
For one video has 1 million or so.
Yeah, and if you actually want to watch Land of the Lost 70s on YouTube, you gotta dig. It's there, but you gotta dig. Which is why I made a playlist of every episode of Land of the Lost on YouTube. For my convenience. Yeah. I'll link that in the description if anybody wants that.
Yeah, somehow it survived on there. I myself had the episodes on there for a while, but they did get taken down.
Yeah, they usually do get taken down. I think the main reason why this batch that I have in my playlist didn't get taken down is because a normal episode of Land of the Lost is 23 minutes. Every single one of these episodes is 46 minutes. Because they're all from one guy's channel, and what he does is the entire episode plays, and then when it finishes, it just plays again. So, I guess that gets around the copyright, it just playing twice. So, when I was watching them on YouTube, using that as my way to watch, I would just watch the whole thing the one time, and then the video itself would be halfway over, and then you'd go to the next one, But now I don't have that problem because my main man had the files from the DVDs. So
Yeah, it is interesting
shout
that
out
the
you.
yeah, thank you though. That the Crofts themselves have 2 of the episodes on their channel, their own channel.
Oh, do they have another episode that isn't just Chaka? I thought all they had was season 1, episode 1.
I'm pretty sure they had season 3, episode 1, season 1, episode 1 on there,
Oh,
unless they
interesting.
took it down. I mean, I can check now.
No season 2, episode 1 though, huh?
It was pretty recent. I think it's within the last 6 months they posted them. They have Aftershock and Chaka. They both posted them around 8 months ago.
Yeah, I knew that they had Chaka because in my playlist of all of the episodes, that is one of the only ones that isn't from this one guy's channel where it's the video twice. It's the one from theirs because that's the only official one. Yeah, you'd think they'd just go ahead and do it, and put them all out there. But on the other hand, I'm not surprised because they're very.
Yeah, I
the
mean,
Crofts
this is
are
pretty...
very stingent with their copyrights.
Yeah, they titled this one Land of the Lost Chaka, Season 1, Episode 1, From the World of Sid and Marty Krofft, and then the other one is just Land of the Lost Season 3, Aftershock. They're not even titling them correctly. They're just throwing them up there.
Yeah.
And only these random 2 episodes, I don't know why.
Yeah, interesting choices, yeah.
Yeah. But
I mean,
whatever.
season 1, episode 1 makes sense.
Yeah.
And maybe they did season 3, episode 1 in case you're one of the people that only remember the 3rd season, or you have the fondest memories of the 3rd season theme song.
Yeah.
So then you click on that video and you're like, oh yeah, this is what I remember.
Strange stuff, but you know what? At least they're active, and at least they're still have content.
And giving us news, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very awesome, yeah. And yeah, so new Land of the Lost content allegedly in the works. You can you can bet your bottom dollar I will have any news right here anytime I get it. I'm following them like a hawk, waiting for them to say more information about it. And I'll also obviously let you know if I get any reply from anyone. So far, I do not believe I have. But I also messaged Wesley on Reddit, which probably isn't the best idea because, I'm the reason why he has a Reddit account, because he replied to my email and was like, sure, I'll join your Land of the Lost Reddit. He was like, let me just make an account. And I was like, oh my god, you're making a Reddit account for me? That's great. And now he is an admin in the Reddit account, and he does make posts on occasion. But I imagine me messaging him on Reddit probably won't get seen for a while. So I realized after I sent the message, probably not the best fit. The best place to reach him is by email or Facebook. So maybe I'll send him another message on that instead.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that would be awesome if Wesley's also a part of that. I mean, I imagine he would be.
Yeah, I hope so. Even if they don't necessarily play Will and Holly, if they want to get younger actors to do it, they should definitely be involved in some way, like background characters, or maybe how about they play it like they've been in the Land of the Lost this whole time, and the series
that would be wild.
And this movie picks up with somebody new falling into the Land of the Lost, and they're like, where am I? And then they wake up and they see Wesley Uri and Kathy Coleman, their modern day ages, Will and Holly grown up in the Land of the Lost. That would be cool. That is one.
That would be something.
That is one way to spin it. There's so many ways you can spin a sequel. It's ridiculous. You can follow up immediately where it left off. You can recast Uncle Jack. You could follow up a couple years later and say that Uncle Jack is dead or not around, or for some reason it is just Will and Holly. Or instead of following up in the Land of the Lost, you could follow up with Rick and see what he did after the events of Aftershock. see him trying to plead his case to the world and
Yeah.
trying to explain this and how he's desperate to get back to his humanity, and possibly seeing him get thrown into like an insane asylum, which is a popular fan theory.
Yeah, I voted for that option. I remember the poll that you
vote?
put.
Did you vote for that one?
Yeah.
I think I voted for he found civilization, told his story, and was just kind of never quite believed. I think he was just viewed as an outcast for the rest of his life. I think he spent the rest of his life rafting and hiking through that area, waiting for another pylon, waiting for another time doorway to open, and everyone looked at him like he was a crazy old man for the rest of his life. But all that he ever did every day was stay out there waiting for another time doorway to open. Very sad.
I mean, that's a tragic story.
Very sad indeed, yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe it does. Maybe one opens up. I mean, one opened up to get Jack in, so maybe on average a time doorway opens every 2 years. And actually, there's that one episode. What's the episode? Not one of our pylons is missing. Pylon Express. In Pylon Express, they literally say at the end of the episode that the moons line up once every. What do they say? Do they say 4 years or 10 years? I forgot what they say. But they say the moons line up every X amount of years. If I'm not mistaken, it's 4. So then Rick says at the end of the episode, well, that means we know when we can go home, because Holly during that one cycle sees the Earth, sees the park with the girl with the frisbee. So that means Will and Holly could get out in 4 years if they remember that. You know what I mean? That is the only, that so far is like the only certified doorway that they know of. Because Holly, Holly could have taken it by herself, but obviously she can't leave them two. And that's also an interesting thing that I never thought of. They give Will that moment of is it in Circle or The Stranger?
It's the search, right?
Or I don't know, the one where he could have gone through the portal though, and he's like, I can't go without my family. They give that, he has that moment, and then in Pylon Express, Holly also has that moment, so that's cute, But yeah, rare that we get new news, yeah, and I say we can end every episode off with that segment, talking about any new news, if there is any, that we have. But yeah, we've been going for an hour. If you have any closing thoughts.
I don't think so. I think we're pretty good for this episode.
Yeah, that was good discussion on episode 1.
For sure.
Next, we got the Sleestak God, which, as I said, kind of serves as a, extension. Kind of should be taken as, with this episode, as kind of almost a 2-part episode of establishing the series. And this one has a little bit more excitement, has a little bit of bad guys, a little Sarisa Taka, a lot of Sarisa Taka. Feel free to watch my Every Time Chaka Says Sarisa Taka video. And but yeah. Good talking with you, man.
Yeah, good talking. I'll see you next week.
Yes, sir. See you next week for the Sleestak God.
Mm-hmm.
Have a good one.